Hello. So we are at our last lesson for the Too Good for Drugs program for 7th grade. We have a lot to get through, and so let's get started. So we're going to start this lesson today by talking about a drug that people often have misperceptions and false expectations about. The messages that you see in the media and in society about this drug are often unreliable and misleading. Okay, so the messages about this drug suggest that the use of this drug can be normal and acceptable. So I want you to ask yourself, where are you getting your information on drugs and drug use? Where are your sources? So I made a list here for you. My list consists of here the following, so I'll just read them to you. I have parents, coaches, siblings, friends, the radio, maybe your neighbors, the music you listen to, the internet and internet sources, movies, the news and TV or TV shows, and magazines. So many of you get your information about drugs from your friends and the teachers and your family members, so the people that are around you. But you also get a lot of information from the music you listen to and the TV shows and the movies you watch. So out of this list, which of these sources, I want you to ask yourself, which of these sources give you the most accurate information about drugs? Okay, so think accurate. So accurate and reliable sources are supported by scientific evidence. Okay, so I want you to make sure that if you're looking up information, that you go to a reliable source. So maybe on the internet, the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, or NIDA, the National Institute on Drug Abuse. Okay, those are reliable sources backed up by scientific evidence. The things that you hear from your friends, it could be something that they've heard. They might have a misunderstanding about it, and it could not be an accurate piece of information. So you really have to be careful. So remember, if you hear a message enough times, you may start to believe it. Okay, so just have to make sure that you're getting your messages from reliable sources. So some sources are more accurate than others. Unfortunately, you may come across inaccurate messages just as often, maybe even more often than accurate ones. So you have to really be careful. So remember, like I said before, if you hear a message often enough, you may start to believe it. So even if that message is an inaccurate one, okay, so if you hear an inaccurate message often enough, you might start to believe that message, okay, and that message is not a true message. Okay, so sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between a fact and a myth. So that's why today we're going to talk about marijuana. The drug called marijuana, and we are going to talk about the difference between a myth or myths that you might have heard and factual information about marijuana. So what is a myth? A myth is invented or an unproven story. It's an idea or concept. Okay, so it's something many people believe to be true without any facts to prove it. Okay, and a fact is something that has been proven true. Okay, so science backed up, remember, by scientific evidence. Okay, so next we're going to see if you can tell the difference between myths and facts about marijuana. I have given you 10 statements that you might hear people say often about marijuana. Okay, so some of these statements are myths and some are facts. If you have the ability and you can stop or pause this video with this slide up and take out a pen and a piece of paper and take a few moments to read these statements and write myth for myth, or M for myth, or F for fact. And then in the next slide, we will go over these. Okay, so let's see how you did. Number 1, myth or fact. Almost all teenagers use marijuana. That is a myth. Okay, so most teenagers do not see marijuana or use marijuana. According to a national survey of middle school students, I think this was done a couple years ago, but they surveyed and they came up with the fact that less than 10% have tried marijuana in the past month. So even if you see marijuana use of teenagers in movies or on the internet, it doesn't mean everyone is doing it. 2, marijuana is safe because it is natural. Okay, so marijuana is natural in that it comes from a plant, okay, called cannabis sativa. But however, just because something's natural doesn't mean it is safe. Okay, so think about poison ivy, tornadoes, snakes. They're all natural occurrences, or natural, but they are not safe. So marijuana contains a mind-altering chemical called THC. And the THC interferes with the normal development and operation of the teenage brain. Okay, number 3, marijuana use affects driving ability. That is a fact. So marijuana use impairs your reaction time, your depth perception, concentration, and coordination. Okay, all of these are very necessary to safely drive a car. Number 4, the effects of marijuana use only last for for an hour or 2. Okay, so this is a myth. So the THC in the marijuana is attracted to the fatty parts of the body, including the brain and the reproductive systems or organs. And it can stay in the body, especially the brain and reproductive organs, for up to 30 days after use. Number 5, marijuana isn't harmful because it's legal to use in several states. Okay, this is a myth. It is against the federal law to purchase, grow, or carry, or use marijuana because it can because of the harm it can cause. However, scientists have discovered some of the effects of the CBD, or the CBD, and which is in the marijuana plant, and low amounts of THC can be useful in preventing and treating certain medical conditions. Okay, so therefore in some states marijuana use and limited possession is permitted under the guidelines of a licensed medical professional. Okay, and when dispensed from an approved dispensary. So think of it kind of like a pharmacy, okay? It's regulated through the government or through the state. So some states allow recreational marijuana use just like alcohol, okay? It is not legal for people under the age of 21 to use. Even if marijuana was completely legal for recreational use, it still isn't safe for adolescents to use. Okay, so still your brain is developing, right? So that is a law to protect the developing brain, a teenager with a developing brain. Okay, number 6, marijuana use slows the heart rate, so it's relaxing. This is a myth. Marijuana makes the heart rate beat up to 50% faster than normal. So the increased heart rate can result in low blood supply to the heart, and it can cause chest pains. Taking a drug is not a healthy way to relax. Okay, you've learned many healthy ways to relieve stress. This is not one of them. Number 7, marijuana is not addictive. That is a myth. So addiction can be psychological or physiological. Okay, so it can be addictive, or marijuana use, or regular users of marijuana are psychologically addicted to marijuana. Emotionally and mentally, they feel like they need it, or they need to be high. Everyday users of marijuana are physically addicted and will continue unpleasant withdrawal symptoms when trying to quit. Okay, so that is a myth. Marijuana is definitely an addictive drug. Okay, 8, marijuana smoke can be harmful to the lungs. That is a fact. Smoke is smoke, right? Whether it comes from tobacco, marijuana, or a burning building. When smoke in the lungs, smoke in the lungs causes respiratory problems. Okay, so inhaling any chemicals, whether smoked or vaped, is harmful. Number 9, marijuana use affects a person's ability to learn and recall information. That is a fact. The THC attaches to the receptors in the brain and blocks the processes of learning and memory. THC also slows or stops adolescent brain development. Okay, and the last one, number 10. THC affects the adult brain and the adolescent brain in the same way. Okay, think about that. The adolescent brain is still developing, and the adult brain is already developed. So that is a myth. So the THC stays on the receptors in the brain longer in the adolescent brain than in the adult brain. Okay, the effects of THC are permanent in the adolescent brain because the brain is still developing. Okay, so it does not affect an adult brain and an adolescent brain in the same way. Okay, all right, I hope that you that if you did maybe get one or two wrong, or if you got any of those wrong, that you now understand why that is wrong. And we are going to move on to talk about how marijuana and how we're going to look a little closer at how it affects the brain functions. So I just want to point out first, before we go to the next slide, that we don't get the most accurate information about marijuana by listening to music or watching movies or paying attention to people who use it. We get the facts about marijuana from scientific research, remember? So I just want to point out that's where the information in today's lesson comes from. Okay, so it's scientific research. Okay, so it's an accurate and reliable source. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the brain and the effects of marijuana use on the brain. Okay, so if you look at the prefrontal cortex, okay, this is the part of the brain that's in charge of judgment and social control and decision making. So THC impairs a person's ability to solve problems and make responsible decisions. Okay, how about the hypothalamus? Okay, hypothalamus controls your appetite, your heart rate, and regulates hormone levels. So THC increases the heart rate and appetite and interferes with that hormone production. So THC interferes with, remember, hormone levels. So right now your body is gearing up to begin production of hormones. And the hormones are responsible for the physical characteristics you develop as a young man or young woman. So when young people use marijuana, their bodies stop producing these hormones at normal levels. Okay. All right, let's take a look at the hippocampus. Okay, that's a part of the brain that controls your memory and assists in new learning or learning new information. So THC causes impaired thinking and interferes with a person's ability to learn and perform complicated tasks. Okay, how about the cerebellum? Okay, cerebellum coordinates movement and balance and coordination. So THC slows down the reaction time, your reaction time, and it can affect a user's balance and coordination. Okay, think about someone who's trying to drive a car. If their reaction time is slowed down, that can result in car crashes, right? How about playing video games? Okay, if your reaction time is off, okay, and your coordination is off, I don't think you're going to be as successful in your games. What are some activities that require other activities that require a quick reaction time? So think, how about playing sports? Think about a goalie for a soccer team, okay? Do you think that that goalie's going to be able to catch those goals or the balls before they go into the goal? Well, his ability is definitely going to be decreased, right? His reaction time is going to be slower. Okay, how about many other activities. Okay, so playing sports, driving, playing video games. Okay, those are just a few of those examples. And the last one, the amygdala. Okay, what does the amygdala do and how is it affected by THC? So it regulates hormone or emotions, fear and anxiety. Okay, so THC can result in anxiety or panic attacks and paranoia. Think about someone trying to maybe interview for a job. If that anxiety level is increased, it could lead to a panic attack. It could maybe lead to the person not even going on the interview. Okay. Okay, so when someone uses marijuana, THC quickly reaches the brain, and it keeps the natural chemicals in the brain from working properly. Okay, and it throws the brain off balance. So just a quick review, the mind-altering chemical in marijuana called THC, when it is introduced into the body, it blocks the brain's messaging systems. Okay, so the brain functions that are interrupted by THC are reaction time, concentration, motivation, coordination, depth perception, and memory. So you need your brain to function properly so you can get the most out of life. Okay, so you don't want to do something that can interrupt your brain, your normal brain functioning. So next we're going to talk about two types of powerful drugs and discuss the harmful effects of their abuse. Okay, so the first one that we're going to talk about, first category, are street drugs. Okay, so drugs like cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine, or crystal meth, are illegal drugs. Okay, they're illegal street drugs that most people know are powerful, dangerous, and harmful to the body. They're called street drugs because they aren't made in a licensed laboratory or prescribed by doctors. They are produced illegally and sold on the streets. So the next type are prescription drugs. Okay, a prescription drug is a drug prescribed by a doctor. Okay, these drugs that are prescribed by doctors have legitimate uses in medical treatment. However, these drugs are too powerful to be administered or given or dosed by individuals themselves. So doctors need to determine appropriate strength and dosage to treat the illness without harming the patient. So when writing a prescription, the doctor needs to consider several factors, okay, regarding the safety and effectiveness of the drug. So some of these factors that the doctor must consider about the patient before writing the prescription are the symptoms of the patient, how much the patient weighs. They need to ask if the patient has any allergies, and maybe what other medicines that the patient is taking at the time. Okay, so this is all considered so that the doctor can administer this drug safely and effectively. OTC, or over-the-counter medications, so medications that if you go into your local drugstore like Walgreens or CVS or Walmart or Price Chopper, these medications are available for purchase without a prescription of a doctor. Okay, so these medications are typically less powerful or have a lower dosage version of the prescription medicines. Okay, so the medicines that are prescribed by doctors. However, the OTC, or the over-the-counter drugs, can be just as dangerous if they are not used as directed. Okay, so think about the labels, right, on, say, a Tylenol if you have a fever, and your parent or guardian would read the label and check your weight, right, to see what the proper amount is to give you. And remember, you're not an adult, so you should never be giving yourself medicine. It should always be taken by an adult. While prescription and over-counter drugs have legitimate uses in medical treatment, the abuse of these substances presents similar effects to those of street drugs. So medication that is safe and effective for one person is not necessarily safe and effective for someone else. The misuse or abuse of these substances can be as harmful and deadly as street drugs when not used as directed. So we're going to take a look at the short-term effects of the misuse of prescription and over-the-counter drugs. So remember, misuse of a prescription drug would be taking a drug that's not prescribed for you or a medication that's not prescribed to you. That would be an example of misuse of a prescription medicine. And the abuse of street drugs. Okay, so any use of a street drug is abuse because street drugs are illegal. Okay, so I just want to point that out. Okay, so if you look here, prescription and over-the-counter medicines, these are some short-term effects of the misuse. So you can see confusion and anxiety, dizziness, nausea, vomiting, sweating, constipation, slurred speech, blurred vision, slow breathing, fast heart rate, and unconsciousness. So those are some of the short-term effects. And if you look here and compare them to the short-term effects of street drugs, okay, the abuse of street drugs, you can see a lot of similarities. So anxiety, irritability, panic attacks, fast heart rate, sweating, slow breathing, slurred speech, or drowsiness and confusion, violent behavior, and unconsciousness. Okay, so the goal of this lesson was to give you all the information that you need to help you make good choices in your life. We hope that you stay away from illegal street drugs and that you use medications properly. Okay, so only prescribed by your doctor, and that your over-the-counter medicines are taken properly for the intended use. So congratulations, 7th graders. You have completed the Too Good for Drugs program for 7th grade for SCAZA. So throughout this 8 weeks together, or 8 lessons together, we hope you've learned skills and that you can and that you were able to practice some skills that you will continue to use throughout your lives so that you can be happy and healthy and successful. We hope that you use these skills every day and remember the dangers of drug use so that you can continue making good decisions and reach your goals. Good job, everybody.